Well, we promised last time that we would go look at the Apocalypse of Sevens, Apocalypse of Weeks from Enoch, I think it's 91, 92, 93. Because here we have, like the animal apocalypse, retelling of history, retelling of human history, this time not in terms so much of animals and people, but in terms of epochs of time. So I put this announcement up, and Jeremy knows something about this particular subject, and he put a chart up. I like that chart. And he said that he put the chart together himself some time ago. Here's what I thought I'd do. Thanking Jeremy for coming on board and his willingness to talk about this chart a little bit. I wanted to read through just those 3 chapters. And in fact, those chapters are out of order in the Ethiopic, and they have to be put back in the right order. 91, 92, and 93. Well, I think that the order, to me, seems best is 92, 93, 91. But we'll see what you think. Just a moment. I like it. Just kind of popped in there all of a sudden. And so I'm going to do that, try to explain a few terms, and it won't take long, any more than probably 10 minutes at the most. And then let's get into the chart a little bit. And if there's a little time at the end, it would be great to get into the omega point theory, where Judeo-Christian belief and quantum physics come together. So can you hear me all right? I guess so. We'll start with Enoch 92, the book written by Enoch. Enoch did indeed write this entire teaching on Chokmah, wisdom. He was praised by all Benim Am, sons of the people. He was a judge of all in the nation. This is for all my Yeladim, my children, who will live on earth, and for the future families, all who observe Tzedakah and Shalom, righteousness in accordance with the Torah, and then peace as an inheritance. Let not your ruach be troubled on account of the times. The Kadosh El Shaddai has appointed days for all things. The Zadik, the righteous one, will arise from sleep to walk in the paths of obedience. All his pathways and deportment will be of timeless goodness and favor. You'll be gracious to the Zadikim, the righteous ones, and grant them timeless standing. You will give the Zadikim power so that they will be full of goodness and obedience. He will walk in the light of timelessness. Katayim, sinners, will perish into darkness. Haolam va'ed, they will no more be seen from that day and forward. And that seems to me to be the introduction. 92. I even put them in my book here. I put them out of order purposely, thinking that 91 would follow 92, but it doesn't work out that way either. Go to 93. And then back to 91. Later on, Enoch brought forth the books and began to recount from them. He said, concerning the world's Yeladim of obedience, children of obedience, the Bakarim, the chosen ones. There are several different classes of people here in these passages. Bakarim or Bakar is the chosen one. Bakarim are the elect, or the chosen ones. Zadikim are generally righteous people that keep Torah. Kadoshim are the general population of people who are good. And finally, Kataim are sinners. Concerning the world's Yeladim of obedience, the Bakarim, and the plant of uprightness. I will speak of such things. Yes, I, Enoch, will proclaim them to you, my sons, just like what appeared to me in the Shemaiah vision, just like what I have experienced through the word of the Kadosh Malachim, the set-apart angels, and writings of the Shemaiah tablets, sky tablets. So Enoch began to recount from the book, saying, I was born the 7th in the first 7, or we can translate that weeks as well, while judgment and obedience was still in effect. And after I am gone, a great evil will arise in the second 7, or second week. Deceit will spring up, and then the first termination will pass. And through it all, the Ben Imam, sons of the people, will be salvaged. After it is done, disobedience will grow, and the law will be made for the Kataim, sinners. After that, at the close of the third 7, a man will be chosen as the plant of righteous judgment. His posterity will become the plant of obedience, Ha'olam Vahid. At the close of the fourth 7, the Kadoshim and the Zadikim will see visions, and a law will be readied for all families. Special space will be prepared for them. At the close of the fifth 7, the Kadosh house of dominion will be built to last Ha'olam Vahid. After that, in the sixth 7, all who live in it will be blinded. The hearts of all will deviously forsake Chokmah. At that time, one will then ascend in that house. In the end, the house of dominion will be burnt down with fire. The whole family of the chosen root will be dispersed. That's pretty significant to say that, especially in light of the animal apocalypse. The whole family of the chosen root, that is, in my understanding anyway, the descendants of Seth. After that, in the seventh 7, an apostate family will rise. A great many will be its activities, and its entire works will be apostate. At its close will be chosen the Bakar Zadik one, of the timeless plant of obedience, to receive a 7-fold instruction about his entire creation. Pretty generic. Of all the Yeladim Ha'am, is any capable of hearing the Kol Kadosh, the Kadosh voice, without being troubled? Who can think his thoughts? Who can behold all the works of the Shamayim? How might there be one who could observe the heavens and understand them? To see a nefesh or a ruach and describe such, or ascend to watch all their activities, to think or to do like them, of all the Benim Am, who could know the breadth and length of the earth, To whom has the measure of all been shown? Or is there anyone who could determine the length, height, and breadth of the Shamayim upon what might be founded? How high is the number of the stars, and where might all the Shemaiah lights remain? Almost sounds like a passage from the book of Job. 93, 92, 92, 93, 91. Let me check that again. 92, 93, 91. Okay, so we're going backwards, I think. So now, Methuselah, my son, call all your brothers to me. It's like at the end of Second Enoch. There we have, wasn't that Melchizedek who is to bring his family together? And here, gather all your mother's sons together to me, for the word calls me, and the Ruach is poured out on me. So I am able to show you everything that will befall you. Methuselah went out and summoned his brothers and kin to an assembly with him. Then he spoke to all the children of obedience, saying, hear, you sons of Enoch, to all your father's sayings, and strictly heed the voice of my mouth. For it is I who am speaking to you, urging you forward, beloved, love uprightness and walk in it. Don't draw near to uprightness with a double mind. Do not associate with the double-minded. I don't think I read this before. Instead, walk in obedience, O my sons. Obedience will guide you on good paths and be your constant companion. For I know that violence must increase on the earth. A great reprimand is executed on the world. Yes, the world will be cut off at its roots, and its whole structure will be destroyed. Disobedient acts will be carried out in the land again. All kinds of acts of defiance and violence. Lawlessness will prevail to a double degree. When kata, disobedience, blasphemy, and violent acts of all types increase. When apostasy, wrongdoing, and uncleanness increase, a great reckoning will come upon all of them from the Shamayim. The Kadosh Yahweh will come out with anger and rebuke to execute judgment on the earth, and violence will be cut off at its roots in those days. The roots of lawlessness and deceits will be destroyed from the beneath the Shamayim. All the teraphim of foreigners will be abandoned. I think teraphim are little idols. Their steeples burned up with fire. Yes, these will be removed from the entire earth. The kataim will be cast into the judgment of fire. They will perish in anger and in grievous fairness. Ha'olam va'ed. The Zanikim will arise from their sleep. Talking about a resurrection there here in the book of Enoch, it's pretty early. Chokmah will arise and be bestowed on them. And through him, the roots of disobedience will be cut off. Kataim will be destroyed by the sword along with blasphemers in every locale. Those who plan terror and commit blasphemy will perish by the sword. And that is all in italics because supposedly it's an interpolation there. After that, here we go. The eighth seven will come to pass. The seven of obedience. A sword will be given to it so that sentence may obediently be carried out on all oppressors. For the Kataim will be delivered to the Zadikim. At the close, the Zadikim will acquire greatness. through obedience. A house will be built for the Melech Hagadol Lakabod, the king, the great king of what they used to say, glory. It will stand timelessly. Afterward, in the 9th seven, equitable justice will be revealed to the whole world. Here's the big apocalyptic promise, or as Schruumkoff says, the apocalyptic lie. Equitable justice will be revealed to the whole world. Don't we pray for that every Shabbat? Equitable justice. All the acts of the Kataim will have vanished from the entirety, written off as a Holocaust. Then all Benim Am will direct their gaze to the pathway of righteousness. After this, in the 7th part of the 10th seven, there will be timeless justice, executed by the Shemayim Malakim, by the great one that springs from all the Malakim. The first Shamayim will depart and go away. New Shamayim will appear. Then all the powers of the Shamayim will shine sevenfold. Ha'olam va'ed. Afterwards, there will be many sevens, sevens without number unto timelessness. It will be an age of goodness and obedience. Kataim will be no more considered. And now I tell you, Beni, and I show you the paths of obedience and the paths of violence. Yes, I will show them to you again, so that you may know what will come to pass. And now, listen to me, boys, and walk in the paths of obedience. Do not walk in the paths of violence, for all who walk in the paths of obedience will perish timelessly. Yes, it seems pretty obvious now reading this yet again that 92 is an introduction, 93 is the first of the sevens, and 91 is the rest of the sevens. So we've got a little bit of a verse problem in there that now we know and we can correct it. Now, here's Jeremy's diagram, and it's intriguing. Okay, there we go. I don't know if you can remember, Jeremy, much about this, but you other fellows, don't you think this is pretty intriguing? I mean, I had to look at this and look at this to try to figure it out, and I just had a few minutes. So I asked Jeremy if he would come and tell us a little about it. I wonder if you could do that, brother. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm having audio problems over here.
Okay.
And so you were asking me something, but I had to deal with some stuff over here.
So like in, you see week 2 there, I see Adam dies on the is that the 3rd day of week 2? And are you saying there that
Adam dies on the first or second week, 3rd day? Yeah. And as I was looking at this, trying to figure out, how I had put this together, I kind of found some of my other documents, and this chart was made back in 2013, so it probably needs quite a bit of updating. But what I did notice as I got through some of my other charts and documents here was that I started to put together various timelines, because there's different dates and different amounts of years depending on which source you use. So I'd started to put together kind of a comparative timeline for like Adam through Abram, citing the Masoretic versus the Septuagint, the Samaritan, Jubilees. And it got really crazy. I have Yasher in here and Josephus and Enoch and Targum of Jonathan. I'm trying to like put all of them in here, and I got carried away and I probably got overwhelmed and didn't finish it. So
yeah, right.
But I just noticed there was a significant difference between just even the first like Masoretic, Septuagint, and Samaritan texts and Jubilees. They differ quite a bit in terms of years. So I'm not sure which one this uses in terms of counting the years, other than because I think the important or the fascinating part about this is like at some point at the bottom there, I claim 2000 AD. I don't know how I got to that, but
excuse me.
Most of this is just documenting what Enoch said. And
all right, I'm going to give you a question though.
Yeah.
Where are you coming up with names like Abraham? Is this pretty sure, or is this a good guess, or is it obvious? Because especially here, the eternal plan of righteousness, I'm kind of wondering, considering this was written somewhere before 165 BC, how we could even know. And look, it projects the future out for a lot longer than Enoch was alive. In fact, I was reading a little bit about one person's way of describing this, and he had Maccabees and everything else in here. You know, people consider that this book of Enoch, which is a composite book, there's 5 different pamphlets in there, that it was written in like 500 BC or clear back, I'm sorry, not 500 BC, I'm thinking of Daniel now, but in antediluvian days. And it is, in fact, a prophecy. Well, between 4000 BC and 165 BC, that is a lot of time. So are we assuming then that these that are being spoken of as the Zadik one, etc., would be the patriarchs? If he was writing in the lifetime of the Enoch, 7th from Adam, well, maybe that's why he doesn't have names in there. Of course, I don't believe that he is. It's a pseudepigraphical work. It's a writing by someone who wants to lift up a great patriarch and is writing in his name. I have a hard time thinking that this is the oldest text in the entire world. I think the oldest one we have of any substantial writing goes back to about 3500. Really, that's not too far off from 4000 BC, where they consider creation to have been finished. Any comments?
I couldn't tell you the answers to how I got to some of these conclusions. And now that I think of it, it's like almost 10 years ago. So I wish I had more time to prepare for our discussion today.
Well, let's do it again.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe look at your old stuff if you have time. I don't know what you're doing now, but the eschaton teaching that you did, It's really good. Resurrection, eschaton, the great day. You know what I'm talking about? Resurrection.
Yeah, that was a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, it was maybe 2, even 3 years ago. Okay, so here's the chart, and I like it, and I'm going to be looking it over a little more. And you know, if you put 2000 AD in that particular place, you had a reason why. I would be interested to see what some of these other charts, how they would compare. Of course, I don't want to have to bother your time. As I said, I don't know what you're doing, but if you have the time, maybe make a little bit of time and we'll go over this in some detail.
Yeah, I think I've always been interested in this kind of stuff, and so I make a lot of these charts to visualize for myself what I'm reading, kind of make sense of it in my head, and I'm a more visual learner, so I make a lot of these things to help make it clear for me, and then I just kind of document it. And a lot of times I'll do it in either a chart like this or in a spreadsheet, or sometimes I'll put PowerPoints together, and then the information kind of like sticks with me in a slide form or something like that. So oftentimes it works to be able to share it with others, but it's not the intent. And so sometimes the details or the citing of sources gets lost. So unfortunately, we don't have that here to be able to look back of how I got to 2000 AD in that era, or putting some of these dates on here. But
it does say that there's set in the future 7s upon 7s later on. So I don't think in these weeks, he doesn't seem to be having a set time period for any of these weeks, but rather than a set time period, that they're pretty open. I have seen some interpretations where somebody knows exactly when this starts and when it ends, and maybe you can in some of the earlier ones, but as it goes on, it gets more and more generic. As he goes on, we'll say he was born maybe in 130 BC. Let's see, 60, I'm sorry, about 180 BC. You're going to get to a point where you're apocalypticizing, that is, taking the history of the past and projecting it as though it had been prophesied centuries before. You're going to get to a place where you're up to your own time. I think the animal apocalypse goes, the writer of that, the Enoch of that, went way beyond his own time. In fact, as I went through and tried to interpret what I thought things were, I got clear up into AD before I quit. Obviously, I'm missing something there, or the guy really was a prophet, one of the two. And I have no doubt that one of these 5 Enochs was a prophet as well as an apocalypticist. Well, anyway, thank you for bringing the chart to my attention. You find anything more on this? Sure, I'd like to know about it. Let's look at the chat before we go on here. All right, Gregory. The meds are hitting me. What meds are you taking? Cocaine? Steve, yeah, I can send you it. Let me put it up here. Let's see. Desktop. And there it is. And now I want to put a couple more documents up here because I would like to, in the near future, talk about the omega point theory. And in order to talk a little about it, somebody's got to know about it. So I want to put maybe, well, whatever I can get here on the omega point theory. If I can even. I just downloaded some material. Well, I know it's on. I didn't save it. It is on my browser. Something monumental happened in the late 80s or 90s. The top mathematician for quantum reality, a man named Frank Tipler. And probably the chief theologian of that time, Wolfhart Pannenberg. He was at the top of his game when I was in seminary in the 90s. And he wrote a systematic theology that just got the religious world so impressed. Let me tell you about these guys a little bit. Tipler, an American mathematical physicist and cosmologist and a genius as far as I'm concerned. I could make nothing out of these books on resurrection of the dead. But what happened is Tipler read Pannenberg's discussion or essay on the resurrection of the dead from a Christian standpoint. And Pannenberg read Tipler's book on the omega point theory. And they got together somehow. And they began to understand. Tipler became a theologian and Pannenberg became a physicist. Tipler converted from atheism on account of what Pannenberg wrote on the resurrection of the dead. And Pannenberg started believing in science. These are two big, big names. So Tipler, he's still alive. He was born in 47. And I want to tell you a little bit about his theory of this omega point I keep talking about and have for years. I still don't understand it. I bought his book. It was so full. In fact, I took 2 classes in calculus so I could understand it, and I still can. The omega point is a term Tipler uses to describe a cosmological state in the distant proper time future of the universe. He claims that this point is required to exist due to the law of physics, a point somewhere out there in space. According to him, it's required for the known laws of physics to be consistent, that intelligent life take over all matter in the universe and eventually form its collapse. During that collapse, the computational capacity of the universe diverges to infinity, and environments emulated with that computational capacity last for an infinite duration as the universe attains a cosmological singularity. This singularity is Tipler's omega point. With the computational resources diverging to infinity, Tipler states that a society in the far future would be able to resurrect the dead by emulating alternative universes. Tipler identifies the omega point with God, since, in his view, the omega point has all the properties of God claimed by most traditional religions. Tipler's argument of the omega point being required by the laws of physics is a more recent development that arose after the publication of his 94 book, The Physics of Immortality. That's the book that I bought and couldn't read. In that book, and in papers he's published up to that time, Tipler had offered the omega point cosmology as a hypothesis, while still claiming to confine the analysis to the known laws of physics. Would it be any good to go farther with this? A quote, intelligent information processing must come into existence in the universe, and once it comes into existence, will never die out. So the building up to the omega point is information, and part of this theory implies that all information will at some time in the distant future be all accumulated in one place and will in fact be God. One paraphrasing of Tipler's argument runs as follows. For the universe to physically exist, it must contain living observers. As an aside, isn't that what they're finding out or have found out? You know, Schrodinger's kittens and the double the electron or proton does not show you whether it's a wave or a point unless you're looking at it. Only when you look at it, it becomes a point. Electron shot through, I'm having a little trouble with this. The double blind experiment, where you shoot a proton and you into a box, and in the box is a dividing board, and in the board there are two cutout slits, and you shoot an electron or a series of electrons into this board, and these electrons try to find a way through the board, and if they do, they're going to go through the splits and express themselves on the back wall of the box. And they're not going to express anything unless somebody's actually watching them. Then, if somebody is observing, it seems like they make a choice as to express themselves on the back wall as a wave or a point. I guess you need to see a short film on YouTube or someplace that will illustrate this. It is very strange, and it has changed the whole encyclopedia of quantum physics, and top physicists are even thinking, look, do these protons, do these electrons, do these neutrons have their own ability to tell if somebody is looking at them? Well, I didn't do that very good, but I wasn't really expecting to get into this, but I hope you do that. I hope you get into it. I hope somebody would look into this a little bit and help me out. So intelligent information processing must come into existence in the universe, and once it comes into existence, will never die out. One paraphrasing of Tipler's argument runs as follows. Here it is again. For the universe to physically exist, it must contain living observers. It's like the tree falling in the wood. Does it make a noise? Not if there's nobody listening to it. It does not make a noise. You need, for a noise to happen, you need a source and you need a receiver. It's like the morphic resonance, where your brain is not a processor. It's simply a receiver of what comes out of these morphic fields in space. And the intelligence that you have is out there someplace. Your mind is only a receiver. It can't think of anything, but it receives morphic resonance from space, where somehow entities can take up space in the time-space continuum, and that's where your real person is. And in fact, we consider our spirits as being confined to this body, but according to Rupert Sheldrake, they're not. They're not. Your spirit is part of you, but it's not necessarily living in your body at all. Your body being only a way of expressing and fulfilling the dreams, goals, objectives of your morphic resonance, morphic fields. That's pretty much the same. What's happening here with Tipler? It's got to have, you have to have observers in a universe for anything to physically exist. If there are no observers, then there's nothing there. But our universe obviously exists. So there must be an omega point that sustains life forever. This is very intriguing to me. Well, hold on. See if there's a little more here. And then there's Wolfhart Pannenberg. He's dead, I mentioned 14, a German Lutheran theologian whose concept of history as a form of revelation centered upon the resurrection of Messiah, which has been widely debated in both Protestant and Catholic theology, as well as by non-Christian thinkers. Resurrection. And as you know, that's part of what we've been doing these last 2 months. We've been working on resurrection based on a strange Greek word in Philippians 3:11, the out resurrection, the ek anastasis. You remember in Philippians chapter 3, verse 10, this Paul is talking about the resurrection. And in the next verse, 11, go look them up sometime. There's the word resurrection again, coming out of his mind or off of his pen. However, the word's different. It's ek anastasis. Out resurrection, or, anastasis means standing up primarily, but it's a euphemism for the resurrection. So we got two words in there, but they're translated the same when they're not the same. And we begin to wonder whether we weren't really reading some something very revealing from Paul, that there's another resurrection that we're talking about. So, the last few of our talks have been on that wise, along with the two creations and following these two creations to your own doorstep in our day. So this talks about Pannenberg's life. I'm just looking at Wikipedia. But these two guys, Tipler and Pannenberg, come together. And they found in the Omega Point theory, and Tipler found in Christian resurrection theology, at least that of Pannenberg, some very similar points. And it doesn't say anything in his Wikipedia about that. And I've got a lot of stuff on that. I just have to go find it again. But since Pannenberg died, this has just kind of gone nowhere. And I can see why, because it's so difficult to understand. Maybe not for you. So what I want to ask you to do for next time is to just go to Wikipedia or some other site, dig up Omega Point theory, and see what kind of results you get there, like what I'm going to share real quick. All right, Omega Point theory. If you can see this, screen share. Here it looks like, looks pretty easy. What is the Omega Point? And then you would need to know what a singularity is as well. And I'll tell you what, Bold Steve, if you get a handle on this, with your ability to do research, I think we could go someplace. So Quora as the answer to the question. This looks like a pretty easy essay to read. Oh, we got a storm going on here. Do you see the spiral on your screen? Do you see a picture on your screen? Hello?
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. This little essay is so much like those chapters in Enoch, the dream visions. Listen to this. Thus, I don't even know who this guy is. First thing I picked up. Thus, no matter how a great civilization we may build, no matter how high our aspirations may rise, they are all ultimately doomed to destruction. Every life. Okay, so my internet connection is unstable. Go away. Every life, every love, everything we value must be erased in the slow march toward eternal oblivion. I don't know how we could express the words of Enoch in the Apocalypse of the Sevens that's any closer to than that, except at the end. This writer goes on to say, thus declares science. Everything built on a foundation of pure despair. Like the denouement of just about every theological apocalyptic essay, it leaves in our mind the question, or does it? All end in annihilation and oblivion. Over the years, a number of scientists have questioned these conclusions. Do the laws of thermodynamics have to lead to this dismal end, or are there other possibilities? Particularly, can we do something about all this? One physicist took this question and ran with it. What would it take, he asked, for life to exist all the way to the end of time? That physicist was Frank Tipler. And the result of his question is the omega point theory. It's both a physical theory of cosmology and a proposal for the future of life in this universe. What blew my mind is Pannenberg, an expert supposedly on resurrection, one of the top theologians that ever lived, a man that almost became my teacher in the seminary. I missed him by just one semester. And so influential upon all theological studies. These guys come together and they accept each other's viewpoint. The omega point is considered theological, and the Christian viewpoint of resurrection is considered scientific. Yeah? Oh, okay, go ahead. You know, I'm getting married Sunday to this young 56-year-old that just came in here. I recently interviewed Tipler on the scientific, philosophical, and theological ramifications of his theory. Today, I'll simply look at the proposal itself. All right. So here seems to be a pretty easy little essay to get a hold of, and I'm just going to put his essays, Micah Redding. Oh, he's probably a theologian. Look, his first name is Micah. And I'm going to put this in the chat, and then we shall say goodbye after we look at the chat. I've been wanting to do this for years. I just, when it comes to do it and talk about omega theory, especially the theological part of it, it just drives me crazy. Try that. Okay, I knew you'd get a hold of this, Steve. Very good. Of killers from April. An interview of killers? Okay. Kiplers, yeah. Exactly. Look at that. Philippians 3, 10, and 11. You see it's got resurrection in there twice. Well, the first one is Anastasis. The second one is ek Anastasis. Look at the Greek in there. Some of you can read that pretty good, I'm sure. Pannenberg. Let me put his name in here. Wolf Fart. Oh my golly. Wolfhart Pannenberg. He's the theologian. Spelled it wrong. Wolfhart Pannenberg. See if you can find that article where they both get together in an interview state and are talking about this, which I know I have it on this computer someplace, but I don't know where right now. This is a last minute ditch here. Okay, any other questions, comments? If it's a question. If LaDuke is still on here, ask him.
Don't ask me. I don't know.
Okay. Thanks for coming on, brother.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay. Look it over. Let's do it again sometime when we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And the rest of you guys, whoever's left here, thank you for coming. Looking forward to next time. Good. I'll try to get this down better. Or maybe, Steve, you'll be able to explain it better. I hope so.